Hey everyone, this is Sean Deveney. I'm with Heavy Sports. I'm here to talk about some NBA issues with our NBA insider, Steve Bulpett. Steve, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. It has been certainly an interesting offseason in the NBA. I think, we're sort of just waiting and watching paint dry at this point, which is sort of typical at this time of year. But, is there anything that you're looking for anytime soon to happen that might change up free agency here?
No, we're all kind of waiting on the Kevin Durant thing, which could take a long time or maybe even not happen this summer or into next season. So, we're watching paint dry, but the colors of that paint are interesting. It's sort of bright shades, there's some major stuff that needs to go down. We're posting a story today that talks about the Eastern Conference, and Milwaukee's kind of set, and Boston is too, to a degree, with perhaps going to add another big man, but nothing major. But you look at Miami, they're going to be doing stuff probably. Brooklyn's certainly in flux. Philadelphia's still got to figure out its rotation, build that. There's a lot of things that are like, these are contending teams that in Toronto, Chicago's got to do something maybe. These are contending teams that are well into their off season and still are not right now what they expect to be when the basketball starts happening on October and November.
Yeah, and I'll start with the Heat there. I think that they're an interesting team because they're certainly swinging for the fences here with Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell. One of those guys they've certainly had targeted here. It seems that they've been unable to pull together the assets to get either one of those things done. Do you think that Miami's, would you count them out for those two big names at this point?
I wouldn't count them out. Pat Riley kind of put the target out there for them by saying that, stuff was going to happen this summer. So, I don't see Pat Riley on November 1st saying, hey, we tried some stuff and it didn't work. And here we are. I think he's going to make something happen. I think they need to make something happen. I think they're alive for those guys. But, look, we've been looking at all these moves basically as binary situations. One team gives you this, the other team gives you this here. And it's easy to look at that way. It's simpler to look at it that way. But most likely, if you see these big names get moved, it's going to be, we're talking 3 and 4 team trades most likely here. And those are really hard to kind of carve out, right? As we're speculating and as you're putting stuff into trade checkers and all that, because not only, do you have to figure out what each team wants along that line, but how does the money fit? And, you might give up a guy to make the money fit that isn't like a huge name, but he plays a significant role for a team. So that role's got to be filled, Like if the Celtics were to trade right now, if they were to trade Grant Williams or something like that, not a huge marquee name, but that's a role they've got to fill. So there would have to be most likely a corollary move down the line for that. So that's why we're looking at it one team to one team, but it's probably going to be larger than that when it comes to like a Kevin Durant being moved or some other people.
Yeah, and we've thought of some examples. The one that I'm thinking of now is in terms of 4-team trades and how hard that can be is when Dwight Howard got traded from Orlando to the Lakers in 2012, which, as I recall, happened during the Olympics, the London Olympics there. And that involved, that was a 14 deal. It was, let's see, who was involved in that? Andre Iguodala was involved in that. Andrew Bynum, who was still expected to be a good player at that point. Vucevic, he was involved in that trade. There were some big names involved in that trade.
Yeah, I think it actually involved the Lithuanian national team too.
Yeah, the entire Lithuanian national team was involved. Yeah, no, but it was and that
just to make the cap numbers work.
Yeah. You've got to do that, but yeah. So I mean these things, yeah, and those are big names and obviously all-star players, and it just takes, it's going to take time, and that seems to be where we are now in terms of all this. If something can get done, and I suspect
let's look at it too that Brooklyn is under no pressure to do this. They're under no pressure to get it done now. They'd like to have things buttoned up in one way or the other, but they're able to sit back here. Kevin Durant's under a 4-year contract.
Yeah, and Utah, for instance, they're not necessarily under pressure to do anything now either, but it's obvious that they want to do, that. Whereas Brooklyn, if they had to keep Kevin Durant, then okay, that's what we're going to do. Whereas Utah, I think that it's pretty clear they want to move Donovan Mitchell. They'd like to have that done by the start of the season. Whereas the Nets, if the worst thing that happens is they have to go through a season with Kevin Durant, then that's what they're going to do.
They twist my arm.
Yeah.
No, I mean the example that you're kind of alluding to with Utah, there's actually a pretty good one that involves Ainge in the past. And I'm not saying that these two players are on the same level, but when the Celtics in 2013 cleared house and made the mega deal with the Nets, they went into that season, okay, this is rebuilding mode. Does Rajon Rondo fit, or do you need to make a deal with him? And it took a while. He was coming off injury as well, but it took a while for them to actually trade Rajon Rondo. So, I think whereas Donovan Mitchell's a more attractive commodity than Rajon was, that could be the case here as well. Although in this situation with a player of that commands that much of your offense, that much of your production, that you'd want to get that done and start the ball rolling on who else is going to need to step up and fill that scoring role, or however many people are going to need to fill that role.
Let's change subjects here a little bit. Something that did happen this week, and that is that formal charges were brought against Miles Bridges from the Hornets on domestic assault charge, a felony domestic assault charge. The NBA has complicated rules when it comes to domestic violence. Obviously the union has some protections in place to protect players. There's got to be this 3-person commission that that Adam Silver will assign, and they'll look into it. It's a complex, it's a long process, and I just wonder, how does this play out? Does Miles Bridges play in the NBA next season? Is that possible? Is this something that the league can wrap up that quickly? Obviously the legal case is going to take a while. He's technically a restricted free agent. He hasn't signed his tender yet, but they have made a qualifying offer for him. So he could sign that and be a member of the Hornets next year. It's hard to imagine, because the charges against him, just looking at it, and anybody can judge for themselves, certainly look pretty severe. I wonder how this plays out.
Well, we live in a different world than we did 10, 15 years ago with regard to people now taking that issue more seriously. And it's not just from a standpoint of whether it's the right thing to do. It's also a business question, right? Unfortunately, that's what it comes down to. If teams if a team wants to go out and get Miles Bridges, is there going to be a ripple effect with their fans, with their sponsors? Those are things that they got to consider. And, that's, business people are concerned with business. So the moral issue aside, and it's obviously a significant moral issue, and pretty cut and dried, but significant. Teams are going to look at it in terms of the business transaction here, the business aspect of it. I think it's hard to see anybody going out to get him. Now, we definitely need to wait until everything comes to light. But like in the NFL, they're able to draw conclusions and make their judgments. It's something I think the league is just kind of waiting for it to play out more on letting the legal people do their job, so that whatever move that they make as a league with regard here, it's kind of supported by the evidence and by decisions that have been made in other venues.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting question for the league as well. What they wind up doing with this case, because there haven't been that many cases where players who are accused of domestic violence actually do get suspended. Oftentimes the case will get dropped or something like that, and the league can still look into it even when that happens. But it just, I think of Jeffrey Taylor, who played for Charlotte as well a while back. I think he got suspended to 24 games. I think that's the longest suspension for this charge that I've heard of. But again, you're right. This is a different world and it's a different time. And just in terms of the free agency thing, I don't think teams are going to take that risk. And then B, does the league come down a different way than it did even 5 or 6 years ago? I think that's a real possibility here.
I agree. But again, I guess the first step is, or the first steps are, letting this play out in the in the system. So there's stuff to be, there's a lot more to go through here. And then, Bridges is going to have to make his decision, like signing the tender and things like that. It's complicated from a bunch of different standpoints. Like in some cases, it's not really complicated.
Yeah.
But the business of it is. And, look, the NBA knew about Donald Sterling and his business practices and all that stuff for years before. When the tape came to light, the audio tape of him, the comments he made, that was one step. The bigger step in getting the league to step in was when the players, made their statements, the Clippers made their statements, and then business partners started to pull away because, if you're a business, you can't be associated with things because any businesses are essentially public. If you're selling a product, you don't want to associate yourself with something like that. In the Clippers case and Donald Sterling, racism, it's bad for business.
Yeah.
Bad for the world. It's bad for human beings.
Yeah, right.
Again, businesses pay attention to their bottom lines and their corporate identities.
One more thing for you, Steve. Switching topics to Carmelo Anthony, who obviously a couple years ago was sort of exiled from the league against his will a little bit. It seemed like once he got released by Houston, I think that was 2018. Nobody would sign him, and then Portland stepped in. He kind of revived his career a little bit. Played pretty well for the Lakers last year. Not great, obviously defensively. There's not a lot that he could do, but he shot the ball very well, especially in LA. And I just wonder, here we are. He's not signed. Do you see him going back to the Lakers? Could you see him going to the Nets? What do you think happens with Carmelo Anthony?
I think he's one of the guys that'll be like one of the last pieces to be decided. When teams finish making or finding out what moves they can, or maybe more importantly, cannot make this summer, and they're getting ready for their season, like, okay, this is what our roster looks like, then teams will be looking at it. Here's a player out here. Does he fit with what you're trying to do? So I think it's going to take a while for Carmelo, unless Darvin Ham says, yeah, I see a role for this guy and I want him. And I think at this point, Carmelo would come in at a reasonable number. He's not looking to break the bank.
No, right. But they're still trying to get, a Buddy Hield or Miles Turner or, whatever they can do with Russell Westbrook. So at this point, Carmelo's a little down on the priorities list. I think that's what you're saying there, right?
Yeah, and for every team that might have interest, that could possibly have interest in Carmelo Anthony, you got to wait and see, when your main moves are finished, and this is what your rotation essentially looks like. Is there a place where Carmelo Anthony fits? And is there a place that he fits in terms of basketball skill and what he can contribute, and also does he fit financially with your salary structure?
Yeah, I do wonder, one place that could be intriguing is Brooklyn, where he grew up. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, when they first signed on there, wanted the Nets to sign Carmelo Anthony. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to. Ultimately, the coaches and the front office saw the defense and said, no, this isn't the guy we want. So they didn't do it. Now, if they do bring back Kevin Durant and you're trying to smooth things over, I wonder if that's maybe a guy we bring in Carmelo Anthony as a nod to Kevin Durant, make him a little bit happier, as we go through what's probably going to be an awkward season.
Well, I think the possibility is there for that, just because Anthony, maybe he contribute, but his number wouldn't be very big. So that's a positive. They're not going to certainly you're not going to let a guy like Durant or Kyrie, who are, their residency in Brooklyn is in flux right now, right? You're not going to let them make some major decision. And I think you pretty much took away the general manager's keys from those guys when they coaxed you into signing DeAndre Jordan to a big number.
You're right.
Yeah. So it's like, take the keys away.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate your time here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Again, I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy Sports. Check out Heavy Sports for coverage of the NBA every day. Thank you.